thought we'd kind of focus on the business and the IT logic behind data virtualization. So what's in it for the business? What's in it for IT? As Jim mentioned, we like to have our customers tell our stories for us. We wrote a book last year that's full of 10 in-depth customer success stories, case studies. You saw some of the videos out in the hallway, some of our customers talking. And in fact, we thought we'd start today by exploring Manhattan Inc. Now, Manhattan Inc., like a lot of you folks, has some business challenges and some IT challenges. On the business side, because of the recession, they've got some slowing revenue growth. And they've completed a merger, but they're not quite seeing those synergies just yet. On the IT side, like a lot of you, they've got a complex IT environment, and they're spending so much time and effort keeping that existing environment going. They don't really have a lot of extra funds to drive new initiatives. So it's kind of a challenge that I think a lot of you might recognize. With that in mind, let's just go ahead and talk to a couple of the people from Manhattan Inc. From the business side, we have the Chief Revenue Officer, Wayne, and we have on the IT side, the head of the data warehouse, Rick. So let's have them, join in a conversation with Rick and Wayne as they talk about some of the challenges at Manhattan Inc.
Thanks for the promotion, Bob. So Rick, thanks for meeting with me here today. Sure. As you know, it's been a difficult economy, and after our merger, we've had a little trouble attracting new customers, and to be honest, holding on to the ones that we have. And the ones who have remained loyal actually aren't spending as much. Mm-hmm. So it's been a difficult time.
All right. Well, but after the merger, don't we have all these new customers and new products? Shouldn't that help?
Well, yeah, in theory it should help, but you know, we run into this little problem called systems. That's kind of why I'm talking systems. Yeah.
So what do you mean?
They're not
exactly
making it easy for us. Well, you know, I'm just a business guy. You know, the CFO, thanks to Bob, promotion. And you know, I just have really simple questions, like, what customers do we have in common with this new company that we acquired, and what products do they use? And you know, I just can't get the answers to those questions. And every time I do, I get excuses from, sorry, you and your team about why you can't do it. And you always ask me for more money if you want to do something.
Well, Wayne, what you have to understand is that we have a lot of information systems. Even now with the merger, a lot of them. And providing sort of consistent information across all those systems is very hard to do. You don't understand that, but it's very hard to do.
I absolutely
don't. So, yeah, it's tough.
Well, you know, I don't get it. Okay, so let's just call time out here. I got a list for my team of what they need, and these seem to be very basic questions to me. Like, all right. Who are our customers? Which ones do we have in common, and which ones have only one company's products? Right. All right. What have these customers bought? What products? Which services? Who has warranty agreements, and when do these expire? This is not tough stuff. Which customers are buying less than they used to, and which customers are buying more? So really, I don't think this is rocket science. All you need to do is get me the darn data. I got some really smart guys on my team. They can crunch the data. They can tell us who we need to cross-sell and upsell to, and that's it. That's all I need.
Well, what you have to understand, Wayne, is that we have a lot of systems, even more with the merger, and providing consistent information across all these systems is very hard to do. So it's going to take us, well, the information you're asking for is just going to take us a lot of time, a lot of resources, and staff. So,
well, didn't you just tell me that already? I mean, I don't get it. We have the data, right?
Yeah, but it's not as easy as it sounds, right? We've been working very hard to get all the information in a sales data warehouse, and well, we're still working on it.
But I just want the data. How hard can it be?
Well, we already have some data in the data warehouse, but what you have to know is that, well, first of all, now with the merger, we have two sales data warehouses, and consolidating both into one is going to take us years. Then we have And then we have the sales, yeah, the services sales data, the product sales data.
Wait.
No. And the list goes on. And then we have the Amazon sales data, which is not. You just have to be a little bit more patient. And by the way, approve the new funding request. And if you do that, we'll build everything you want.
Wait. But aren't we already spending $5 million a year on this data warehouse? What am I getting for that money?
Yeah. Well, all right. But, all right.
Okay, that's the end of the scenario.
All right.
So maybe if I can get some help on the slides. I got some help on the side, so thank you. So that was Manhattan Inc. Is that at all, did that story resonate? Is that like a real life use case? Besides being at Manhattan Inc., we have some guys with day jobs. And maybe if they weren't moonlighting at Manhattan Inc., they could get some of these challenges taken care of. But Wayne, I think a lot of you know Wayne. He's former research director at TWI. He's a founder of the BI Leadership Forum, which is a community and research area, research service focused on BI leaders. And he writes books about BI leaders. His most recent book is Secrets of Analytical Leaders, where he does in-depth interviews with 7 senior analytic leaders from companies like Nokia, Facebook, Kelley Blue Book. So Wayne today is going to represent the logic of data virtualization from the business point of view. And then Rick, many of you in the data virtualization business would know about Rick Vonderland's. Jim mentioned his book, and it'll be available to the folks at the end of the day today if you turn in your evaluation. And this is like the 10th or 12th book you've written around data management, starting with the first book ever written about SQL. So Rick's come across from Holland to talk with us today about IT's logic and the logic why data virtualization is a good thing for IT. Right. So with that, shall we begin?
I'm going to ask questions.
First question.
Oh. Yeah, and
did you read it, Bob? So the scenario? No. So this is now.
Okay, so with that, back to you guys.
All right. Yeah, we just want to ask you guys some questions, basically. First of all, just to get a sense of where you're coming from. Anybody like Wayne, the CFO? I love that title. On the business side here? Anybody on the business side? Okay. Okay. Couple? Anybody on the IT side? Yeah.
All right.
I always have to ask, anybody on both sides?
Oh, yeah. And the people on the IT side who constantly has this feeling that they're under siege, and whatever they do, it's always hard to keep up with the business. Who has that kind of feeling if you're on the IT side? All right. Cool.
Yeah, Hannah, how many of you are actually using data virtualization software right now? Okay, right. About a third, quarter to a third.
Okay, and of those people who has this feeling that sort of a responsiveness to the business is improving because they use data virtualization so that they can react more. Oh,
good.
I like to see that. Yeah, good.
And of those who are using it, anybody get the sense it's reducing cost? Okay, keeping costs even? Okay.
So finally we're saving costs, right, in the IT. We're making it more agile, probably. So probably what that means, that data virtualization is going to become successful, right? Well, that's good for my book. Good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we go to the next session.
I think so.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Bob. Am I on? There we go. Okay. Because he lured me down here because he said I could try out. There's an audition for Broadway. So how did I do? Rick, we have a future? Well, oh, sing? Dance too? He didn't tell me that. Well, we're not done yet. We actually have an encore. So my job's actually pretty easy here. I'm going to talk about the business challenges from a business person's perspective. And I think probably most of you, even though you're on IT, probably understand a lot of these challenges. And we're not going to talk about solutions yet. That's kind of the next section. But obviously, from a business person's perspective, the velocity of business is really accelerating. You used to compete with people or companies in your region or your country, but now it's global competition. And expectations of your stakeholders are higher than ever. As global competition increases, accelerates, people want their piece of the pie now. And they certainly don't want to wait or fall behind. So there's a lot of urgency in the business world today. And certainly there's been a lot of economic fluctuation, economic volatility. And that's because the world is increasingly connected. So say if Thailand sneezes, then Singapore gets a cold. And if a bubble pops in the US like it did a couple of years ago, the whole world starts to crater. And we're seeing the fault lines in economies that had some fundamental weaknesses. And also preferences shift. Because of a global economy, your loyal customers are not necessarily so loyal anymore. Okay? They're easily lured away by low-cost overseas providers or by internet providers who offer more convenient service. So we can't really bank on very much these days from a business perspective. So everything's very tenuous. And certainly, as Herodotus said in the 400 BC, the only constant is change. And that certainly is the mantra of business today. There's so many things going on just even inside your company. You get new executives all the time with new strategies. Certainly mergers and acquisitions throw the company upside down. There's restructurings, reorgs, and then finally new technologies. The pace of the technological advancement today is incredible. So there's new opportunities with each new platform advance. So we've got mobile now, we've got cloud, we've got big data. So anytime one of these new technologies comes around, new platform shifts, it creates new winners and losers and new opportunities for innovation, but also new risks. So what do we as businesses have to rely on to sustain ourselves, to achieve a competitive advantage in the marketplace, a sustainable advantage? Well, the first and foremost is agility. So if the velocity of business is accelerating, we internally have to go as fast as possible. And we need IT, the data people, the apps people to lead that charge. Because if they're behind us, they're weighing us down, they're dragging us down. So we have to be more agile to respond to new opportunities and avoid increasingly larger risks. So that means we have to be proactive instead of reactive. We can't be running around putting out fires. We actually have to know in advance where those fires are likely to come. So one of the companies that I profiled in my book, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City, they had this problem. They had a high-level metric, and any time it started to trend downward, they would all run around with their heads cut off. And that's an exact quote. Trying to figure out what went wrong, what happened. Since they've implemented a data warehouse, which is, I guess, not a great word here, but since they got their data house in order, let's say that, and they implemented analytics on top of that, they were able to actually drill in to understand what are the major sources of costs among their membership. And they identified a number of different key opportunities for them to lower costs. For instance, they realized that elective surgeries were costing them a ton of money. So they're embarking on a new education program to help educate people about the pros and cons of doing elective surgeries, especially spinal surgeries, which seem to be very costly. They also realized that patients that had multiple chronic diseases were also costing a ton of money. So they've come up with a new program to get a number of doctors working together as a team to address the needs of these patients. That would ultimately save money. So working more proactive is how we as organizations achieve a competitive advantage, a sustainable advantage, and achieve our goals. And also information at your fingertips. Okay? We want employees, we want to empower them with information at the point of interaction with customers, at the point decisions need to be made. So another company I looked at in my book, US Express. It's a mid-tier shipping company in the US. They implemented a BI-heavy application for their dispatchers that gave them all the information they need to make decisions at the point of need. So if a new order comes in, they know exactly where all their trucks are on the road in real time. They know how many hours those drivers have been on the road that day and how many hours or days they've been on the road that trip. They know what they're carrying, what empty space they've got, where they are from this potential new order. They have all the information at their fingertips to make a decision to optimize the cargo carrying capacity of those trucks and remain within compliance with state and federal regulations. So that's information at your fingertips. That's pulling data from multiple sources in real time to meet the need. And we can't do this without standardized, consistent, high-quality data. So we need to have common rules and definitions for key entities, dimensions, and attributes. Standard data. Without standard data, we are running around with our heads cut off like chickens. With standardized data, we're not spinning our wheels. We can get right to the point to make decisions. That's what we need. Information at our fingertips and standardized data that enables us to be more efficient in attacking and addressing our needs. And finally, as I mentioned, we need analytics. Analytics goes hand in hand with big data, which is another big buzzword. Working smarter, working more proactively. To me, that's what this means. Creating models to help us understand customer churn, cross-sell, upsell. A large part of my book is about how companies are deploying analytics and what are the secrets to their success. This is a chart I put together it's in the book that shows what kinds of analytic applications are predominant today. A lot of them are marketing-based, cross-sell, upsell, campaign management, customer acquisition, but not all. There's budgeting, forecasting, fraud detection, pricing optimization, and the list goes on. We're just starting to really wade into this water of deep analytics and how to apply it to our data in real time. And I know this is something that Composite's working on. And it has some exciting news in the near future. So that's really the summary of the business challenges from the business perspective of what we're facing today. And obviously, I think you can read between the lines and see exactly the role that data virtualization might play in helping us address those challenges. So Rick, it's your turn. It's going to talk about the IT challenges.
Good morning, everyone. Again, as Bob already said, that I've written a book on data virtualization. And always when I do that, if I get a copy or a whole pile of copies of the publisher, and I always take one to my parents and I show it to them because they like that. They're now 80 plus years old. They like to see those books. So I took this one, took them to them, and they went sort of through the whole thing. And and my mother eventually said, "Well, it looks very nice, but what the is data virtualization?" And I said, well, that's easy. So I opened the book, found the definition, and the definition goes like, data virtualization is the technology that offers data consumers unified, abstracted, blah, blah, blah. So I looked up, after I've read the whole thing, I looked at her face, and her face was like, so she didn't really get it from the definition. So I thought I have to come up with something else. And well, you probably know the saying, right? What is the picture is worth 1,000 words. So I decided to use this diagram, this sort of a super high level view of what data virtualization is, which is also in the book. So I could show her that. And I started talking about, well, with data virtualization, you're decoupling the application, the reports from the data stores, and it will give you agility, and it's good for productivity and so on. I also talked about this, that imagine that you have a reporting tool using SQL. It will throw the SQL statement to the data virtualization server. It comes into the data virtualization server. The data virtualization server is going to look at, well, where is all the data stored? It will break the query in multiple smaller queries. It will send it to the various databases, and all these databases will start to send results back. The data virtualization server will start to merge all those results, and then will send the final result back to the application or to the report. So it's sort of like this, right? You have the users, they see the reports, maybe they also see some data structures, but those data structures are defined inside the data virtualization layer, and then the data virtualization layer hides the IT systems. So you don't really see how complex they are. This is a funny diagram, by the way. The longer you look at it, the funnier it is. But even this looks sort of clean, right? Because for some end users, yeah, our IT systems look more like this, right? Even more complex. And the data virtualization layer hides this. And some people even say, and it even hides some of the IT specialists. Maybe this is not relevant to your organization, but sometimes I meet IT specialists where I go like, are these guys from a different planet? And they have a hard time, right, talking to end users. Well, the good thing about data virtualization is that we also hide those people. And suddenly reminds me of the new book that has been written. And it's sort of a similar kind of book as the book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Are you familiar with the book? Maybe you've read it. Who's ever read it, that book? All right, well, there's sort of a similar book, and the title is IT Specialists Are From Mars, and the rest of the world had hoped they would have stayed there. And it's, but all right, we hide all that stuff. But that is a good thing, right? Because users are not interested in how it all works. They just want to see the data in a clean form, in a consistent form, and that's it. It's like the users of a phone, right? If I use a phone, I don't care whether satellite links are being used or whether cables are being used. What I'm interested in is, does it work? Yeah, doesn't the connection drop? Is the sound quality okay? Is the price okay? That's what I'm interested in. And I think for BI users, it's the same thing. They just want to see clean table structures, clean reports, that's it. And how the data comes to them through a data warehouse, data mart, they don't really care about all that stuff. A little sidestep again here. I've used this slide before, and sometimes afterwards I get people asking, I didn't really get it. The photo on the right, it says wireless, but I see wires all over the place. It's about the top bird, right? All right, so don't come to me. No. And the feeling I do have that sometimes if users ask for, I want to have a BI system, I want to have a specific type of report, I sometimes have the feeling that they think, yeah, we are going to build it like this, sort of straight on these production systems. But we all know that that's not going to work, right? We always build these chains of databases, right? Long chains of databases where we copy data from one database into another, into another, into another. And the closer we come to the right-hand side, yeah, the more the data has a structure that the user wants. And this is sort of a very simple picture of our chains. In normal cases, we have networks of databases. Yeah, if you deploy data virtualization, you say, well, let's first get rid of these data marts, physical data marts, yeah, and personal data sources, and just implement that in a virtual way. That definitely simplifies the whole architecture. And some customers have done exactly this. It makes it easier, it makes it simpler. There's only one group of people who hate this. Really, they hate this stuff. This whole idea of getting rid of physical databases and moving towards virtual databases or virtual data marts. And that's, of course, the DBA group. They don't like this at all. Or, as we used to call when I worked for Shell, the DBA mafia. They don't like this at all. Not at all. All right. So if you sort of summarize where we stand with data virtualization, data virtualization is all about decoupling data consumers, such as reports and applications, from all the data stores, data warehouse, data marts, production databases. And if we decouple, it will become easy to plug in new data sources. I'll talk about that later on. It will be easier to implement new forms of BI, easier to replace storage solutions. Imagine you're playing around with an Oracle database engine or a SQL Server engine, and you want to have some more speed, and you want to move towards an appliance. If you decouple the two, the reports from the databases, life is a little easier. On-demand data integration, which is something data virtualization can do. So the moment you ask for data, then it's being integrated, then it's being transformed. That is the reason why we can do with less databases, which will lead to the simplification of the architecture. Operational BI will be sort of simpler to implement. And then what data governance people definitely like is the centralization of common data integration specifications, and I will get to that later on. But that will lead to better productivity maintenance.
All right, so we're talking now about solutions. Now that you've learned a little bit about data virtualization, how it works, what it is, what some of the benefits are, from a business perspective, what is the value? Talking as the CFO, I guess, of this Manhattan Inc. I mean, to me, the benefit, the value is really simple. I mean, my mantra as a business guy is faster, better, cheaper. I want the information as fast as I can have it. I don't want to wait around for IT to consolidate it necessarily into a data warehouse. If I have to wait a week, a month, or heaven forbid, 3 months. And in fact, when I was at TDWI, we did research about, well, how long does it take to create a data mart or a subject area data mart? And the best practice was 3 months. But I know from the business user's perspective, that's way too slow. And if there was one theme that resonated throughout the book that I just wrote, talking to all these analytical leaders who are very successful in deploying business intelligence and data warehouses and analytics, it is how to deliver value faster. How do you deliver value faster? They have to go as fast or faster than the business to gain credibility. And without that credibility, they kind of ignore you and they view you as a cost center. If you can go as fast or faster than they go, they view you as a partner. And the business really wants to partner with technologists because they see and they know intuitively that the technology is a source of competitive advantage. But I think the thing that data virtualization brings more than anything is the idea that you can integrate, you can access and integrate data without having to consolidate it first. It doesn't mean you don't have to consolidate it. There's certainly times and reasons that you want to consolidate data into a warehouse or into a temporary cache to improve performance or to do more complex analytics that might be difficult to do on the fly. But we're liberated from having to consolidate as a first step. And in some respects, that's the key to this whole big data movement, which we can talk about offline, which is, we can just load data in as fast as we want, not have to worry about having to model it and transform it, because that brings a lot of costs up front. As a result, we decide, let's not bring all that data in that we would want, because we don't know if it's valuable enough to warrant the time and expense of actually modeling it. So that's faster. We also want better, which means we want that standardized data that I talked about earlier. And we want to be able to access that standardized data from any tool, anywhere in the organization. And we also want to be able to access any data from one tool. We don't want to have to be siloed by our choice of tools. But in many organizations, our tools are attached to specific data sets. So if you want that data, you have to learn the tool. And you have to get permission in triplicate to actually use the tool to get access to the data. And business doesn't want to climb over walls to get at something they view as just a raw material for doing business. So they want better. And obviously they want cheaper because we're all under budgets that we have to adhere to. And any money we give to IT means it's less money that we can apply to other things that perhaps matter more in terms of meeting customer needs. So with data virtualization, there's an opportunity to reduce our need for consolidating types of techniques, data warehouses, data marts, and also the people needed to implement those. So from what I've learned, and one reason I'm here, is because when I came last year, my eyes were open to the reality of what data virtualization can bring, which is enables you to work more agilely, or agility, and that's not right? I can be more agile, more proactive with data virtualization, and I need less people to manage the environment. So that's the realization I learned last year and why I'm here. So ultimately, if you can deliver faster, better, cheaper to me, I'm going to get greater value and higher returns. I'm going to start seeing you guys as a partner and helping me achieve my success. And I can start leaning on you more and more. I can start talking about you more and more when I have to make my business presentations to the executive team. I'm going to say, well, I can do this because I've got this new technology and this new partner who's making it happen for me. And in fact, that's what a lot of these guys in the book said, is that as an IT person, if you're delivering faster, better, cheaper, you don't have to say a word. The business people do your talking for you. So these are examples from composite customers, and there's tons of these examples. These are 3 from the book that Bob mentioned. I like this one from Comcast because it shows that data virtualization is a really versatile type of technology. It's not just for querying data. You can use it for many different things, like Comcast uses it to update multiple directories in a single transaction in under 2 seconds or less. In fact, they use this instead of a replication tool that wasn't meeting those SLAs. So to me, data virtualization, it's really data middleware, okay? And as such, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You can do many different things with it. And believe it or not, when you implement a tool like that in the business is going to find many ways to use it. So that's powerful. The last two really are using data virtualization as a layer to create a data service. So you query this one service and you can get access to all the data in your organization, wherever it sits, whether it's in a warehouse, a mart, or in your operational systems, if those systems owners are giving you access to pull that data in real time. So the energy company, common view of data across 40 sources, 600 entities, 7,200 attributes from 30 plus tools. Okay, this is key to their data management infrastructure. And it's why I wrote, after hearing about this story, that data managers should really think about implementing data virtualization first, data warehousing second. And that's a radical statement from a guy who spent 12 years as Director of Education and Research at the Data Warehousing Institute. So, and then Compassion International, same kind of thing. They needed a way to get data to people more quickly. And they implemented data virtualization to do that. And also, using the data virtualization semantic layer, they were able to standardize the view of all that disparate data wherever it lay in the company. So that's a brief encapsulation of how data virtualization helps the business. And in the end, it makes you a partner with the business. And that's a much better place for you to be in. It's more exciting, it's more challenging, you get greater recognition, you have a better career path. So this is the way you want to go. So Rick, you're going to close out with the IT solutions.
Sure. Well, as Wayne said, so I'm not allowed to make jokes anymore. So sorry about that. This is going to be it's going to be the most boring part of the whole morning session from now on. So sorry about that, but it's all Wayne's fault. So it's Wayne's fault for that, right? Okay. So what I'd like to do is sort of talk about some of the advantages we're getting if we deploy data virtualization technology. But I know that some of you are familiar with data virtualization, but some of you are not yet. So before I dive into these advantages and try to explain where those advantages are coming from, maybe what we should do is just in 1 or 2 minutes sort of explain one of the key building blocks of a data virtualization server, of most data virtualization servers, and then we'll go into the advantages. So let's make it really technical. So I already used this diagram which sort of shows data virtualization from 10 miles high. But now how does it really work? So if you sort of open up these products, what you're going to see is this. So before we can play with data and data sources, we have to define what I prefer to call virtual tables. Composite calls them views, which is the same name that SQL database servers use for similar objects. So virtual tables. So normally the way it works is you import a table from Oracle, or you import a table from SQL Server, or a sequential file, or an Excel spreadsheet, or web service information. You sort of import those specifications so that the product knows that the data sources are there, and then the fun starts. Because then what you're going to do is you're going to define virtual tables. You're going to sort of add sort of specifications that will transform the original data in the data that you want to see. So for example, if we define a virtual table, we can bring in filters, we can select certain columns, we can concatenate columns, we can apply calculations, we can standardize codes, we can invoke cleansing operations, we can join your data source together. We can do almost anything we want with that source data and then transform it into a table structure that we think we need, or that we think the users need. And the good thing about virtual tables is that we can stack them. And that's important for the rest of the story. So we can stack them. So you don't have to build virtual tables on source tables. You can build virtual tables on top of other virtual tables. The first one is faster delivery of new reports, and that's important, right? That we can implement new reports more quickly. Now, this is an important issue. I'm not sure whether you saw this study done by the Aberdeen Group last year. If you haven't seen it, I would strongly recommend you to download it. It's still available on the internet. It's a study that sort of, well, they tried to study whether the whole decision-making processes within organizations were changing. And of course they are. And one of the primary results of the study was that 43% of the organizations reported that making timely decisions is becoming more and more difficult. Managers increasingly find they have less time to make decisions after business events occur, which means if there's less and less time for them to make decisions, there's probably also less and less time for us to build new reports or to change existing reports. Now, with all the tools that we've gotten over the last so many years, are we able to build reports more quickly? Now, in the same year, the TWI, and again, I would strongly recommend you to download this report. Last year, the TWI came out with this report, and it had some really interesting results in it. This one I really liked. Developing a complex report, or dashboard with about blah 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 blah, took on average 6.3 weeks in 2009, 6.6 weeks in 2010, and then 7 weeks in 2011. If you then go back to the previous slide where Aberdeen says, but we want to be able to build more and more quickly because the decision-making process is going more and more quickly. You go like, there's something wrong here. It looks as if we're taking more and more time, right, to build the reports. Is that because the tools we have for building reports, is that the cause? They're not so efficient anymore? No, it's because if we build reports, it's not just a matter of building new reports. It also means we have to change data mart structures, we have to change ETL processes. It's not just the report. There's a lot more to it. And 30% of the organizations indicated they needed at least 3 months or more for such a development exercise. So we need more flexibility, we need more productivity. Now this is a slide that I showed a couple of minutes ago. Let me dive a little bit deeper. So now with data virtualization you have a choice. You could say, well, I think I need a data mart, or that report needs a data mart. But the choice now is, do you want to make it a physical data mart or you want to make it a virtual data mart? You now have the choice, right? You can do it one way or the other. What is the difference? Well, the difference is the activities that you have to do to build the two. So if you look at what we have to do to build a virtual data mart, it's very simple. What you have to do is design data structures, right? You still have to talk to users. What kind of information do you need? How do you want the codes to be organized? So that's still the same, right? And then we have to define a mapping, which means we have to define how the data is going to be transformed from the original data into that virtual data mart structure. But that basically is it. You can become a little bit more technical and start thinking about should we use caching or not, but basically that's it. If I compare that to building physical data marts, that's a lot more work. So you still have to think about the data structures, that's the same. You still have to think about, well, then how do I transform the data from the original source to the data mart? That's sort of the same kind of work. But then with a physical data mart, you get all that other stuff. Thinking about, okay, how am I going to implement the database? How am I going to load the database? How I'm going to reload it periodically? And how I'm going to tune it and optimize it? And that's a lot of work. And then if something changes in the physical data mart, if the user says, well, I'd like to add a dimension to a star schema thing, I mean, that could mean that we have to repartition the whole thing, come up with different parameter settings. It's a lot of work, and I don't have that in my virtual data mart, and that gives me more speed, right? There is less work to do, and I can make that list on the right side a lot longer, to be honest, but that would be too negative, right? That would sound too biased. This is another way of looking at it. I'm still not happy with the slide, but I hope you sort of get it, what I mean with this, that in a traditional environment, if you would build a report, if you build a data mart, what you do is you start with analysis and design, you talk to users, then you get all the physical database design and tuning, how are we going to run it, do we have to use partitioning, do we have to run on a parallel machine, and then you get all the ETL stuff, and then you have to tune that right before you can start building reports, and then the report development starts. And when that's done, then we can sort of hand over the report to the user and say, well, you can use it. If I use data virtualization, it's almost as if we sort of switch things around. So you still have the analysis and design that is still as difficult or as easy, depending on the situation. But then you can say, well, if I know what they want, I can build my virtual tables, and that's it. And then when they are done, and that's not going to take a lot of work, if that's done, then the guys doing report development can start. So much faster, I can sort of deliver the report. It could of course be that what I've created, maybe it's not the fastest solution possible, but the users can play with the report, they can play with the data, and then afterwards, if necessary, I can always spend time on, okay, do I have features to optimize performance, to tune it, but the point is I can deliver the report much more quickly, and I think that's a big advantage of data virtualization. Things sort of change in order, and I really, really like that. Right. Another advantage, and I'm mixing two here. This is I did a session a couple of months ago in London for a whole group of data governance people, and this is the one they like most. It's this whole notion of, imagine that you have a heterogeneous environment of reporting tools. So you have users using Excel, you have users using business objects or something else classic like Cognos, and you have SAS users. So you have this heterogeneous environment, and then we want to sort of guarantee consistent reporting. Now that is hard to do in a heterogeneous reporting environment, because if you are using Excel, business objects and SAS or any other kind of tool, what you'll see is that we have to replicate or duplicate a lot of specifications. So if you have things such as the northern sales region does not include Alaska, if I have that specification, what you're going to see is that specification might end up in all these different tools, in all their different languages. Now from a data governance perspective, that's horrible, right? Because who's going to guarantee that those specifications have been implemented in the same way? And who's going to guarantee that if we change one, that all the others are changed automatically? And there are no tools for this, right? This is what you have to organize yourself, and that is tough. Now with data virtualization, when that layer sort of comes in, what you can do is bring in that specification at the data virtualization layer, just once. And then we're going to take it out from all the reports, but all the reports accessing the data virtualization layer will use that one specification. So if I now want to change it, I only have to change it in one spot. Now you can probably understand why data governance people like that. Now, and this will just be one of the specifications that is part of the definition of the data virtualization layer. Another one that I like is easier to plug in new data sources, and we're getting more and more of them, right? Wayne talked about big data. Well, there's a lot of them. Now, in the same report of the TWI, they had this study result, that in 2009 we needed about 8.4 weeks to add a new data source, and then 7.4 weeks in 2010, and then 7.8 weeks in 2011. So it stays stable. Well, that's what it looks like. But still, it takes quite a lot of time to add a new data source. But this is a topic that I like a lot, this whole notion of self-service BI, and I think we all know that, right? Self-service, whatever, is becoming really, really popular. With all these new tools like ClickView and Tableau, and more users are doing this stuff. Right. Collaborative development, collaborative meaning that you see more and more that the analysts and the end users are sort of working together. Now, just a quick question. Who of you has ever created a data model? Just any data model, entities, attribute, relationships? Yeah, some of you have, all right, okay. So who's ever done normalization? All right, so what is the definition of the fourth normal form? Anyone? No? All right. Oh, but you know what it is, right? Now, who's ever built or created a data model and then handed it over to the user or shown it to the user and then said, well, is this what you want? Who's ever done that? Sort of like these very technical pictures, and then, is this what you want? Is this your information needs? Well, if you've ever done that, you may have noticed that most of the users are going to look like my mother when she, when I talked about data virtualization. They don't get that. Now, some do, but not all of them. Some of these data models are just way too abstract for them. One of the very practical advantages of data virtualization is that we can always look at the data itself. So when we build a data model, and then when we define those, let's say, entities or tables or whatever you want to call them, as virtual tables in these products, we can straight on also show the users the data itself. And what we're seeing is that definitely helps. Maybe the model itself is too abstract for these users, but the data in most cases is not too abstract. They understand that data, and if you then show them that, they can go like, no, Jones should not be here. They should not be part of this table. And they like that. It makes it more practical, more down to earth for them. And that leads to a more collaborative form of development. We can sort of work together, and that speeds up the whole process. And it really works. So we can look at the data itself, and products such as Composite also allow us to do data profiling, right, on demand, so that you sort of study the data, so the data that's coming from all these source systems, and sort of look at the quality of the data. Again, we can do that with the users themselves. And then, of course, support for operational BI, which is a simple term, but it's technologically wise, it's a challenge, right, to implement operational BI. Some try it like this. Right, we'll just build all this operational reporting straight on the production systems. Well, you should try that once. It's just fun to do. You might get some interference on the production system, but it's always fun to try out. What most people do is, well, that's not going to work. Yeah, let's use replication technology, and then every time when something changes in the original databases, we'll just copy that as fast as we can, to a sort of a replicated or copy database, and then we'll do the reporting there. So the report will see operational data, but maybe it's a couple of microseconds sort of out of date, but that's acceptable, right, for most reports. Now this will work. The only thing is that replication works very well if the structures of the two databases are almost identical and not too many transformations, because it's going to slow it down way too much. But that means that the report that we've built has to access this operational database structure, which was not designed for reporting at all. And that's tough to do. And that's then again where data virtualization comes in, because data virtualization has all the features to transform any kind of database structure to sort of the right data structure for certain reports. So by combining replication and data virtualization, you do get an architecture that allows you to build operational BI, and it allows you to do it in such a way that the reports you create don't have to sort of understand these highly technical data structures that we normally have in our production systems. Makes it sort of easier to do. And to be honest, and besides that, you have to solve some other technological issues. But basically, this is the architecture that works. If you then also want to combine the operational data with historical data, which is probably inside the data warehouse, again with data virtualization, it's just a matter of sort of combining the two, sort of hooking them up to the data virtualization layer, and then presenting all that as a sort of a clean set of tables that hold the original up-to-date data and the historical data. All right, now, and I can go on and on and on, but I think I'm going to thank you, and I think we're going to ask Wayne back.
Let's go back to Manhattan Inc. And let's assume that they had actually implemented data virtualization. How might that conversation that we had earlier, how might that have changed?
Rick, thank you for meeting me today.
No problem. We, the IT department, are here to serve you.
That's good. As long as you don't tell any jokes, I'm fine with that.
All
right. But as you know, the economy's been tough, and after our merger, it's still been tough to attract new customers and keep the ones we have, and those that are loyal are not spending as much with us. So it's been difficult.
Mm-hmm. But don't we have all the new customers and new products from the merger? Doesn't that help?
Yes, we do, and I must admit, even though it hurts me, your team has been instrumental in helping us address the challenges that we've been facing.
That's good to hear, but why do you think so?
Well, it's pretty simple. To figure out the best way to cross-sell and upsell our merged products to our customers, we needed a 360-degree view of those customers, and you guys surprisingly did that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a big challenge. Initially, we decided to go for the more classic approach, build all kinds of databases and then use ETL to copy data from one to another, but we decided to go for a data virtualization, and that saved us a lot of time.
Wow, it's interesting to hear, as long as I don't have to sit through the whole presentation. I had to throw that in there, but anyway. So what I like about the approach is, whatever you call this thing, it's fast, and I'm all about doing things fast. And because you were so fast, we've actually seen an uptick in our cross-sell rates. We're now at 4%, and expecting to go higher.
No, that makes our cost savings, our IT cost savings, in less ETL development time, less database replication. It makes it look like small potatoes.
Well, that's true, and that's actually not the whole story. Because you guys are delivering data to us fast, we've hired some statisticians who are starting to do some predictive churn models to make sure that we hold on to the customers that we already have. And also because we're doing a better job with cross-sell, upsell, and churn management, we're doing less advertising. And I also hear that you're hiring or need to have fewer people on your IT staff, so I don't have to pay you guys as much money. So in the end, we're saving a lot of money.
Oh, that's good. And well, the idea was to have this sort of abstraction layer that will allow us to reuse and share data more. Sounds like it worked.
Well, it did, and I'd have to say you guys were instrumental in our success, and I've enjoyed partnering with you, and I look forward to many successful outcomes in the future.
Well, I've never heard that from the business, so thanks. And thanks to data virtualization.
So if you guys will stay up on stage, we'll take a few questions. Peter, you out with or am I it for the questions? All right, who's got a question? Because I come around with the mic. Okay, Ted?
Thanks, Ted Hills, Bank of America. My biggest challenge is saying what you said to my business partners. So I get it. I get data virtualization. How do I get my business people to charge my technology leaders to go in this direction?
Well, so you're on the IT side, right? So what I've learned is that you can't say anything. The biggest, the words that you say are the actions you take. So you have to prove yourself, and it's a chicken and egg kind of thing. And a lot of the guys that I've talked to talk about getting quick wins and getting that credibility, which gives you some momentum, and you build on that momentum, and you keep it rolling. So yeah, words from IT folks don't mean anything to business people. And in fact, one guy, Tim Leonard, said, I try really hard not to be from IT. I work really hard to learn the language of business. I spend a lot of time learning the business. And when I finally open my mouth, I'm talking in their language. I'm talking about increasing the wafer count per square foot in an assembly line for a semiconductor factory. That's the language I take. And when they turn to me and say, are you from IT? Then I know I'm where I need to be. And they're seeing me as a partner. So you got to speak their language. You got to deliver some goods fast. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated technology. It shouldn't be too expensive. But you should deliver something, faster than IT's ever delivered anything, and that will get some attention. Especially for something that's painful to them, that answers some questions that they've never been able to answer before.
No, I agree with Wayne on this.
Okay. More questions?
On the left, what? Oh.
Okay, we'll start here and back to Andy.
This is Niraj from Infosys. So this is great, I buy this, but I would like to, maybe hear more on the downsides of data virtualizations. So like performance, maybe so on that side. So you had myths, but I didn't really hear. So there's nothing wrong with it? I mean, why is everyone not using it?
Yeah, this is, if I'm allowed to start, Wayne.
You start this time, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
You take the hard one.
Through the years, I've been involved in introducing all kinds of technologies in companies, and this is the first one that doesn't have any disadvantages. Amazing. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and that was sort of the reason why I decided to write the book. No, there are disadvantages, of course. If you look at it from a technological standpoint, we all know that if you do on-demand integration, on-demand transformation, on-demand everything, that is going to cost you time, right? It takes time to do all that. Well, if we use a more classic approach where we use ETL, what will happen is that all those transformation integrations are done on forehand, right? We just access the result of that whole process. So there is an issue there. Therefore, to be honest, I always recommend companies that go for data virtualization also to consider faster database technology. Because you'll need faster database technology to sort of get the same kind of performance. But we have to be honest, yeah, most data virtualization products do have features on board to sort of do all the transformation integrations also on forehand. They call it caching, which definitely helps. But performance, of course, is an issue. But this is almost like a law of nature in IT. Data virtualization will give us more flexibility, but flexibility always costs you something, right? It's not going to come for free. And you're going to pay with computing power, I would say. Yeah. Does that answer your question in a way? Yeah.
Wait, hold on, I want to add something to that. I mean, historically, the bugaboo for data virtualization, it's been around for 20 some odd years, has been performance, scalability, and complexity. And also, your source system owners may not want you to touch their systems and do real-time querying, which is a political issue. But with the advances in CPU and memory and network speeds, and the query optimizers that these tools now have, a lot of that performance, scalability, and complexity is diminished. So you can do a lot more on-the-fly types of transformations and queries that you probably couldn't do 10, 15 years ago. So the technology's improved. You still have to do data standardization, and you do have to do data modeling. So that's not going to go away. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and that's sometimes the hardest part about getting your data house in order. Is one, getting the business to agree on what things mean. So that's hard. I think also today there's a perception issue, and you touched on this, Rick, that this federating your sources. And everybody lives in a federated world now. We're never all going to get our data in one place. And people are starting to realize that. But people don't perceive that this technology yet is the answer. And that's just a perception issue. There's a lot of baggage that goes along with it. And we're here today. I'm here. Rick's here. Claudia's here to try to proselytize that this technology is it should be part of the IT portfolio. Mm-hmm. It should be almost the primary tool in your data integration portfolio because it has a lot of things to offer. And but it is an enterprise deployment. So and like most enterprise tools, you have to start small, and you have to pick your your initial application and then grow it from there. So it's not going to be a panacea for your whole architecture all at once, especially if you already got stuff in house. It's going to take some time to grow and spread throughout your organization.
Hi, this is Saikat from UserReady. I have to first thank you guys. You have explained the thing. I think I got it now. I had no idea of data virtualization before that. And I also figured that there is layer after layer, and he kind of stole my question. I was also going to ask about performance, so what you said that explained, but do you have any data that saying that, okay, this much of volume coming from two different sources and the output takes this much of time or anything like that, any benchmark of that sort? If you have anything, I would love to hear that. Thank you.
Well, the vendors probably have that kind of information. So, Bob, can you answer that question?
Yeah, we can take that offline. It'll really depend on each topology of your network and your servers and the types of queries. That's one of the things to remember. What's the nature of the queries? Because when we think databases and we think we're building the warehouse, we're really taking the entire company's data set and trying to build the historical thing. And a lot of times what we're more focused on is these wide, shallow, or smaller queries that are to meet the operational or the self-service business needs. So, it's a mix, and but every particular topologies and the types of queries are going to be a little bit different. But we can cover that in this room next door. There'll be some technical people you can spend some time with.
Yeah.
One of the things that really sold me on this technology last year, sitting down with that energy company I referred, that's done an enterprise deployment of composite. And they turn things on their head. I always thought, well, you consolidate first, and then you go federate when you want some additional data, like real-time data or web data. But they've turned it on its head. They kind of, by default, they federate everything. And then when the performance is not where they need it, or for political reasons they can't go after the source data on the fly, that's when they cache the data, or they persisted. So they turned the equation on its head, and I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. You know, by default, you go virtualize, and then when performance becomes an issue, or scalability or politics become an issue, then you persist. Then you can solve all problems.
Yeah. If I can add something to that, if we talk about data virtualization, we always assume that all the integration, federation will take place on demand. We assume that because these products can do that, right? They have the features available. Say if you ask for data, we'll get it from all these sources, we'll combine it, we'll transform it, and we'll give it back. For me, data virtualization doesn't always imply on-demand data integration. If you would look at my definition of data virtualization, it does not include the term on-demand whatever. I think that in certain situations, ETL is still the better approach. But the point with data virtualization, that should be hidden. But I do like it that on-demand is the default version. And then only when we see performance issues or scalability issues, then let's think about another form. But then still, we're going to hide it. Like the service hatch in that Indonesian restaurant, you don't really see how they do it. So for me, it's not automatically on demand, but hopefully it's the default form. Yes.
And I'll add one other factor. You'll notice in a lot of Rick's diagrams, the data virtualization server was over the top of the data warehouse. So the data warehouse often exists, and the data has been consolidated and cleansed there, so it makes an excellent source that then can be used for other things. And the performance there of those larger database management systems, your big Netezas or your big Teradatas, they're screaming fast, and our optimizer knows how to work really well with them. Now you have a choice. And as IT professionals, you can apply your intelligence to solving the problem in the most optimal way. Whereas before, it's, I think Rick had the chickens jumping off the cliff or something. It's not that bad, but in a sense, it's like there was one way to do it, which was fine. And now you've got a couple ways to do it and be intelligent. Andy, you had a question.
So actually, I wanted to respond also to something that Wayne said. You were talking about how hard it is to get the kind of business user groups to agree on definitions. And something we found with data virtualization is because it's so iterative in how you can get stuff out and show it to them and say, is this what you want? Right. The process of getting that agreement is faster. So it's been an incredible assistance in that area, which is by far the hardest thing in doing BI. So the question I have, Rick, was for you. And I may have misunderstood, but it sounded as though you were talking about two advantages. Actually, who had faster, better, cheaper? That was you.
That was me.
That was a question for you. I'm sorry, Wayne. Okay. You talked about it being more agile, and you said something about smaller teams. And it sounded as though you were suggesting that smaller teams was an advantage. And I was just curious about that, if there was something with the team size.
Well, in talking to composite customers, in fact, one last night, they have actually been able to reduce the size of their IT team as a result of implementing data virtualization. So I don't have many details on that. I think you'll hear about that a little bit later today.
Yes, here.
Vikram Nair with Pfizer Animal Health. Great presentation, gentlemen. Following up a little bit on the question of business involvement, what are some of the prerequisites before you introduce data virtualization? Can you insert it at the beginning of a project, middle of a project, end of a project, a consolidation project, for example? And again, to what extent do you need business cooperation, collaboration to really get the value out of it? Or is this something that it sounded like IT could kind of do in the background and just give data, serve up data all day, and just delight the business?
Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing when data virtualization is being used is that from one perspective, you could say that there's not a lot that changes. We need less people, so we need less DBA knowledge, let's say. But if you look at the way we talk to business users, again, there's not a big difference, right? It's still about trying to understand the data, trying to find out, well, how do we have to process the data so that it gets into the form that he or she wants. All that stuff stays the same. But as Andy also said, but you do get a more collaborative form in the process. So we work together more closely. And of course, that sounds easy, but some organizations are not prepared for that. So the users themselves are not really prepared for that. They're so used to the more classic approach that occasionally we come over to them, we show them our models, and they go like, don't get it. So we go back and then we change it. And now this collaborative process, it's, well, they have to be aware of this, that this is going to happen with this new type of technology. But besides that, it's not a very revolutionary approach in the sense of you have to throw away everything you have and rebuild from scratch. No, it's all very evolutionary, adopting data virtualization. So it's not that big a deal. Yes.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on that. But again, it sounds like there are some prerequisites to making this really work, right? Whether it's master data, whether it's data standards. So you can't just walk in and it sounds like from your presentations make absolute wonderful stuff out of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It sounded like that.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, it probably isn't like that. And that's why I'm asking, what are the 5 things you need to have?
Well, you do need business involvement. I heard over here, I mean, this is middleware, right? So there's a temptation of IT to say, hey, it's middleware. We don't need the business. We'll just go implement this, and it will be part of our infrastructure. There's 2 problems with that. One, how are you going to fund it? But 2, as Rick was saying, you do need business involvement. And so you really need a project, an application with a sponsor, with a pain point, who's willing to step up to the table and say, all right, we're going to fund this, and I'm going to trust you, IT, that this, this infrastructure, this data services, middleware is the way to go, because it's going to enable us to be more agile. But we got to define our terms, and you have to get the business involved. And we heard here how data virtualization, accelerates that process. And then you have to, model the data as well. So there are no shortcuts. This is not a silver bullet, believe me. That's why you have to start small and land and grow. Now, there may be some composite customers that have done it the other way, but I haven't come across any. But when you're successful, I've seen it, that first application successful, it can spread very quickly.
But you still want to have that list of 5 prerequisites, right? Yeah. Well, to be honest, I have a hard time in answering the question. And when you were talking, we're going like, okay, which projects have I been involved in up till now, and what were the prerequisites? And I don't have very specific ones, to be honest. Yeah. All right. Will you help me writing, by the way? Because I have a lot of time. Okay.
I have a question about when you talk about the SOA as a service middleware, it basically have gone mainstream adoption. Data virtualization as a data middleware has not gone mainstream. What do you think is going to happen to the data virtualization technology in the next couple of years, which is going to take it to mainstream adoption?
Okay, that is a very easy question for me to answer. Just read chapter 13, and it describes it all. Now, to give some answer, I think you could say that my feeling is that these products are going to evolve in 2 ways. One is the product will be faster, more scalable, right? That's what you expect, more technological features. But from my perspective, what's more interesting is that I really, really hope that they will support the whole data modeling stage better and better. So I hope they're going to add business glossary capabilities. I foresee sort of an integration with master data management capabilities, so that we're sort of more and more going away from, let's say, runtime technology, but more and more tools that help us in the whole system development lifecycle if it concerns data. And I think you can already see that in some of these products. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
But you want to go you want it to go mainstream, right? That was part of the question.
Yeah, and SOA right now, it's pretty much everybody talks about SOA, no question about SOA. Data virtualization, the word is one question. Also, again, exactly what it is and what can you do is still kind of funny. So a lot of business leaders actually very small circle, probably very well known, but large IT audience.
Yeah. Well, I think Rick and I believe in this, and that's why we're here. I think we at some point will get to a tipping point because the technology is that beneficial. We're not there yet, but a lot of it depends on you, too. If you're customers and you have a success story, you really need to be willing to share that and start to evangelize the greater industry. And eventually we'll hit that tipping point, and then this will become as common as SOA, or replace SOA, or be, merged with it.
Okay, I guess one last question. Hi, Mike Sullivan from Wellington Management. My question is more on the operational support side. How are you seeing IT organizations change their support model to support composite or support data virtualization? Are DBAs being cross-trained in virtualization? Is it falling within the middleware organization? If there's a performance issue, does it go to the DBAs or a centralized, virtualization team? Just kind of see how people morph in their IT organizations to kind of support this new technology.
If I look at the projects that I'm involved in, I see very different solutions, and they are different because it really depended on not only on the data virtualization server that you acquired, but also the database technology that you use. For example, if you do buy a real appliance and you forget about the more classic SQL database service, it has a major impact on all these aspects that you mentioned. So it's hard to sort of give you one answer. If you have a specific feeling, we can do that sort of offline, of course, but it depends on the whole architecture that you're going to come up with. But that's my personal feeling. I'm not sure whether you have a different feeling about that.
The folks that I've talked to, the operational and support footprint isn't all that big. But I suggest that we take your question and keep that in the back of our minds as we listen to all the customers, because I think the customers who are going to speak here today have a wealth of information to answer that question, plus the one about the prerequisites, because they're the ones in the trenches building these things, implementing it. And Rick and I, as much as we like to talk about it, we don't implement it because we're talking about it. So,
Well,
maybe you implement it. Well, we don't have 6 months to go do these things. So, anyway.
All right.
So with that, that finishes up the Q&A and our session on the business and IT logic for data virtualization. Thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, you're welcome.
And